Let's actually dive into conflict a little bit. Why does conflict in female friendships? Well, first, why is it inevitable? Because you're going to have it. And then how does the conflict in female friendships look like? And I want to contrast that with what we typically see on like the Real Housewives of whatever city, which is like screaming and table flipping and character assassination and, all the things. So let's actually, so it's inevitable, but what does conflict look like in female friendships?
Yeah. So we know conflict is inevitable. Again, intellectually, you are a person with your needs, preferences, desires, and goals, and so is she. And the closer, like literally, the closer you get to each other, the more you can see. You can see your differences. You can see annoying habits. You can see where she falls short. The closer you get. That's why there's safety in distant friendships that aren't that tight. That feels very safe. Yeah. But the closer we get, and now we're getting, I can see some stuff. But that's the nature of any human relationship. If I'm talking and involved with any other human being, at some point we're going to have competing interests, and we got to get to the business of like working this out. I think the difference is that a lot of times people hear like, conflict's inevitable and you have to work through it. But I think we're kind of conflating sometimes healthy conflict with unhealthy conflict. And so, healthy conflict, it's an opportunity to meet a need or solve a problem, right? So that might look like us, both taking turns. We kind of talk through what this is going to be and speaking directly and honestly and, affirming one another, trying to figure out how we can kind of collaboratively work through this, being communicative. Unhealthy
and also I think assuming the best of intentions. If I can add something,
100%.
It would be I'm assuming the best of intentions with the person I'm having a conflict with, like the things that we're having tension over is not malignant or malicious in its intention. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, which kind of goes back to what we said earlier a bit, if we're doing the work beforehand of establishing, I am for you, I support you, I love when you win. If I've been doing that over the course of our friendship, hopefully in a tense moment, it's easy for you to say like, okay, she has the best of intentions. I don't often see this from her. Maybe I misunderstood. It's easier because I've established that with you multiple times. And so unhealthy conflict is anything we're doing that slows connection or understanding. So giving the silent treatment. I mean, what purpose does that serve? Now, if you need space, that's one thing. I can say like, hey, I'm still like really angry, like in my body about what you did yesterday.
But that is an immature coping mechanism.
Oh, 100%.
And that is not an appropriate coping mechanism.
Yeah, I had a friend last year, our friendship sunsetted, and this is something I watched her do with other women. And that was kind of the beginning of like, oof, even though she didn't do it with me, I watched her do it with other friends and almost delight in it. So she would say, yeah, so-and-so did this. And I don't know. She tried to text me about it. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking to her. Like, if you're going to be like that. And it was just such a turnoff and showed me like.
She probably saw that modeled in her own home, right?
Oh, 100%.
She learned that from somewhere. 100%. Like learned it from mom or dad.
I think a lot of us who have any kind of behavior or default response to conflict, yes, I do wonder, like, was that how conflict was handled at home? We don't say anything, or I'm going to show you I'm upset because I can't bring myself to talk about it. It feels vulnerable to talk about it. I don't know how to talk about it. So I'm just going to be quiet, so I totally get that. But that would be unhealthy conflict because, I mean, how long do we do this standoff? You know what I'm saying? Or triangulating. I'm involving other people so that they'll come back and tell you how I feel. All of that, intimidation or shaming, things like any of that, it doesn't work to meet the need or solve the problem. It just delays understanding and connection. So that could be one way to assess, is the conflict I'm currently in with a friend, is it healthy? Are we doing our best to manage it healthily, or is it dysfunctional?
What do you do if someone's giving you the silent treatment?
So you would call it out with very tangible language. So I always say that you want to be careful, especially with women. You want to be careful saying things that are easily refutable. So when we say things like, I just feel like your vibe changed, or I feel like you're being shady, or I feel like you have an attitude, you're being weird. That's all such elusive language.
Subjective.
Yeah, anyone's going to be like, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? But if I could say, hey, we haven't spoken since the incident last week, and normally we talk every day. So it seems like you're obviously upset about something. Just let me know, like, what's going on so we can solve it, or so I can hear and understand what's going on. Like calling it out. We haven't spoken factually since the incident. We normally talk every day. Help me understand what's going on. If she continues to be silent, I think that says something. And if she denies it, which sometimes we do because we have to maintain an appearance of cooperation. So if she does the whole, oh my gosh, no, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? We're cool. Like,
Which would be gaslighting.
100%.
It's like, what do you mean? Am I going crazy?
100%.
No, you haven't talked to me in 2 weeks.
Exactly. So that can be difficult too. Like that, like gaslighting and what are you talking about when you're called out is not helpful, obviously either.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I'll pull out a quote from your book. It's this, you call it the paradox of anger. And in the book you write, women's anger is viewed as an inconvenient leak, whereas a man's anger is seen as an instrument for respect and resolution. There will be an inevitable consequence in our close relationships. If we see anger as an emotion we need to suppress, we'll fight to hold back during times where we've been legitimately aggrieved. But this is a missed opportunity because anger is a productive emotion. I'd love for you to expand on that because that is so important for so many women to hear around. Anger is a productive emotion. It's a sign. It's telling you something. Your emotions are always a stamp. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, 100%. Often when I hear people talk about emotional regulation, they're talking about like, don't get mad and punch the wall, like hold it in. And I just think
positivity.
Yeah, like just,
everything's great.
And it's just like regulation doesn't mean deny how you're actually feeling or pretend that it's like acknowledge how you feel and then being intentional about how you respond. That's me regulating my emotions. Anger is a completely valid emotion, but some of us are so scared to be perceived as an angry woman because there are social consequences to being the angry woman. It's going to keep you out of rooms. People are going to be like, she's difficult to work with, so we're trying to work so hard to maintain an appearance of cooperation, which requires a lot of mental labor that men just don't have to do.
Oh, because we're called she's such a bitch, like that's what we're called.
So the labor of constantly measuring, okay, how do I say this? Or let me just pretend I'm cool about it. But anger is valid. Now, how that is expressed, that's another issue. Am I cursing her out? That's another issue. But to say, hey, I'm really pissed about what you said at the event yesterday. And I'm angry that you said that in front of a bunch of other people. I'm angry is totally valid, but it can be difficult sometimes because we know it feels risky sometimes to do that. And then, the paradox of anger, and I got this from a book written by Ann Campbell, but she says, when we express it, we feel guilty. When we hold it in, we feel guilty and mad at ourselves for holding it in. So it's almost like you just kind of can't win and we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.